Hello, and welcome to the Eventual SUNZZ podcast. My name is Leah, and I use she, her pronouns. You can find me on Instagram as miss_LJV. If this is your first time here, I'm so happy to have you. This is a great podcast to start with because it is my 2020 year in review. If you have been coming to my podcast for a while, so happy to have you. I love building community. Today is January 1st, 2021. Yay! It honestly doesn't really feel any different. You know, we didn't really do anything for the new year every single year for my entire life since cable stopped being a thing. I would remember at 11:58, like, oh, I should find a ball drop. Every year since I stopped watching cable at my parents' house as a kid, I have missed the ball drop. Several years I would just pull up a YouTube video and do a countdown, like after the fact, but most years it's like just spending 2 minutes of panicked looking for a live feed, not finding one, and then being like, okay, I guess it's the new year. That did happen yesterday, and it was just me and Steve, so, you know, it wasn't anything, but we were awake for it. Honestly, the biggest thing that happened last night / this morning or ringing in the new year is losing The Office from Netflix. I was literally watching an episode of it when it went off Netflix. So, guess I'm getting Peacock and probably deactivating my Netflix account. Really, all I watch on Netflix is Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Office. So, anyway, I am so happy to be here. This episode is going to be my 2020 year in review. This is starting my 3rd year of podcasting. It's so exciting, and it's so like, where was I at in 2019 and where was I at this time in 2020? It's so interesting to go back and compare and just see what my life was like. I mean, my first episodes are so cute, and like, I just remember sitting on the couch over there and the camera being so far away and being nervous. And last year, I really felt like I got into podcasting and really just did what I felt like, and it's worked really well. Let's dive right into my 2020 year in review. It was a pandemic. Did my knitting reflect that? In 2020, in no particular order, this is just the order that I wrote them down in, I knit 4 cowls,
You're like a blessing. Oh, I wasn't waiting for you, yeah, I was just wasting all my time living without you, yeah, like a rocket on a planet, that's how I feel. You're so gorgeous and you know it, you can't be real, and you use it to confuse me, but in the best ways, you make my day.
I knit 4 shawls,
loving me just like you do it, like you. This don't live, so we keep growing just like we do it, like you do it, like you. Cause I want it like you want it too. get insecure, baby. I like you, sure, baby, cause that's the only way to build something amazing. And there's gonna be some bad
4 pairs of socks,
people that don't really understand the feeling that we have. There's gonna be some bad wishes from people that don't really understand this what we have. Keep loving, keep loving me just like you do it, like you do it, like you. Hips don't lift, so we keep growing just like we do it, like you do it, like you.
2 tops, like sleeveless tops or smaller tops.
Like you. There's gonna be some bad wishes from people that don't really understand the feeling that we have. There's gonna be
2 hats,
wishes from people that don't really understand it that we have. Oh, baby, keep loving, keep loving me just like you do it, like you do it, like you. Hips don't lift, so we keep growing just like we do it, like you do it, like you.
6 sweaters,
Once upon a time, we were both happy. Everything was fine, then suddenly it leave. I was left behind, broken in pieces. Then you'd reappear. Sometimes we all feel a little afraid. We don't put our emotions on display. But I've gotta be strong. If you feel it too, your chances are gone. And I don't need you anymore.
one Afghan, one scarf, and 1 pair of gloves.
Try to toe the line, make you wanna stay. Asking myself why you keep going away. Don't want more goodbyes, so I've gotta say that although I've tried, sometimes we all feel a little unsure. We don't really know what we're here for. But I've got to move on, and I don't wanna know.
Let's dig into those a little bit more. In 2020, at the beginning of 2020, I had never knit a sweater. I was partially in the process of knitting a fingering weight sweater for a friend who had asked me to knit one for her, and I stalled out for quite a while, but I did end up finishing it in 2020, but it was not my first finished sweater. 2020 was the year that I actually started knitting sweaters, and I was pretty upset that I waited so long before doing it. If you can knit a tube, you can knit 3 tubes, aka a sweater. And so if you're afraid to try a sweater and you don't think you can do it, please just try one. Just try a simple sweater. Look for easy patterns. I am so upset with myself that I waited like 13 years to try to knit a sweater when I was absolutely capable. I really thought I would knit more socks. I thought at the end of 2019, I felt like I was getting into a rhythm of knitting socks, that I could do at least a pair a month, whether it was for me or Steve or someone in my family or friends. And that just kind of fell by the wayside. I think that oh, you know what? I know what it is. I wasn't out a lot because of 2020 and pandemic and being at home. I wasn't on road trips where I could work on socks. I wasn't going to like doctor's offices or waiting in line at the store. I was at home, and if I'm at home and I can knit anything I want without having to lug anything around, turns out I'm gonna work on sweaters or shawls. My shawl creation, of course, went down. I would say in previous years, I would be knitting a lot of shawls, and I only did 4 this year. A couple of them were pretty substantial though. And of course, actually 3 of them were really substantial. And of course, the reason is that I traded shawls for sweaters. Someone I follow on Instagram actually posted, I don't know if it was a reel or a story, a few months ago that said something to the effect of, I always want to make beautiful shawls, but why would you make a shawl when you can just make a sweater? And I've thought about it for a few months, and I kind of agree. I love shawls. I love wearing shawls. Steve really likes to wear shawls. He wears a lot of my stuff around his neck. He loves like that cozy feeling around your neck. Whereas for me, I like the way shawls look, and I like, you know, that when they're covering my arms, but I actually kind of hate them around my neck a lot of the time. My neck is really sensitive. It's very itchy. My hair always gets matted in the back or otherwise like, you know, messy and tangled. So I honestly feel like 2021 might be more sweaters. The 2 tops that I knit, one of them was a languishing tank top that I had been working on. It was the Cityscape tank. Yes, Cityscape tank. And I think by the time I finished it, it was too small. I had started it so long prior that by the time I finished it, it was at least a size too small, maybe 2 sizes too small. I haven't actually tried it on, I don't think, since I blocked it. I tried really hard to stretch it out, but it is a fuzzy sheer top, and I just don't think that it would fit me right now, which is fine. But I don't know anyone smaller who would want to wear it, or whose torso length would be similar to mine anyway. The other top that I worked on was a bralette by Jessie May Designs, and I knit that in a Knit Circus yarn, so a gradient, and I loved it. It is so pretty, and it was really cute and easy to make and fast once you got the measurements figured out, but it ended up being too small, so I gave it to my mom. I don't even have it anymore. In 2020, I crocheted not my first Afghan, but the first Afghan that I felt confident and proud of. I had crocheted myself a simple Afghan that started with a magic circle, and you just sort of went around and worked your way out. And I do have it still, and I do use it, but it's coming apart a little bit. I don't think I knew how to weave and crochet ends very well, but I still use it and it's fine. I crocheted the Daphne Afghan by Tony Lipsy for my brother as a baby gift. He is going to have a child soon. And I loved every minute of it. It really made me feel confident in crocheting, and I foresee lots of crocheting in my future. Other projects that I worked on, I made 3 crochet scrubbies. I had also planned to make a bunch of those for family this year. That did not happen. I did not really do any gift knitting in December because I had an injured hand. In total, this last year, in 2020, I created 25 projects plus the scrubbies. For comparison, in 2019, I created 28 projects, 9 pairs of socks was the other thing, and I think an equivalent amount of shawls. Some milestones. In In 2020, I finished my first full sweater. In 2019, I had knit 2 tops. One of them was a crop top and the other one was more of a tank top, and both of them were great, but they just weren't full-length sweaters, and I feel like they were kind of unique for their creation, and they sort of gave me the boost that I needed to convince myself that I can make clothing that will actually fit me and my body and that I will like it. So I really count 2020 as the actual first year that I made a full sweater, sleeves and everything, and that I wear it and love it. 2020 was also the year that I did my first test crochet. That's right, you guys. I actually test crocheted a scarf for an amazing person by the name of Whitney Anderson. It is a beginner pattern, but it was a really good experience because most of my experience so far in doing crochet are patterns that come with videos. And so even though this was a very, very simple pattern, it didn't come with a video, and so I had to trust myself to actually try the stitches, know that I was confident in my ability to read my stitches, and yeah, I ended up with a very, very lovely scarf. As I mentioned earlier, another milestone is that I had a first gift sweater. Even though I had started the sweater in 2019, in 2019, I really had to trust myself that I could knit a sweater that fit a friend, especially a friend that I wasn't really seeing by the end, especially. And before that, I wasn't really seeing her very often either. And so I really had to take those measurements and be able to create the piece. And I'm so happy that I did because she loves it and wears it all the time. Another, I think, milestone for 2020 is my first gift socks not to Steve. I may have made a pair of socks for my mom in the past, but I don't remember, so I'm pretending that I haven't before. In 2020, I did knit 2 pairs of socks for family members, and because it was a surprise, I just took the measurements that I had done from them from before and their shoe size, and I went with it, and I think it worked out really well, so that was exciting. It makes me feel more empowered to be making socks for people whose feet I don't have access to all the time, which has been my fear in the past. Having my own feet and Steve's feet makes it so that I can have people constantly try on socks, which I can't do if I'm not living with that person. The last milestone I want to talk about is the first hat made for someone else that, in my opinion, fit really well. So I feel like my mom is probably watching this and she would disagree with me and say that the hats I've knit her have fit perfectly fine, but the hat that I knit for one of my friends for her birthday, I felt like was the best fitting hat that I have ever made for anyone, including myself. I don't really make hats that fit my tiny head very well either. So I was really proud of this hat because it fits my friend amazingly and it looks well on her. And again, it's a pandemic. I'm not really seeing people. And so I just went off of the measurements that she gave me, and I am so pleased with the result. Okay, so we've talked about my projects for 2020 and we talked about my milestones in 2020. Let's just talk about some fun facts here. The first fun fact is that I did not finish a single dishcloth in 2020. I have an entire cubby full of dishcloth yarn that I had planned to make dishcloths or hand towels out of for my family. As I said earlier, that didn't happen. In 2019, I had been doing washcloths at work during meetings, and I stopped doing that in 2020. In 2020, I worked from home, and again, since I wasn't walking to meetings or traveling around campus, I work for a university, if you don't know, I then just kind of chose selfish, simple projects to work on during meetings and not working on washcloths. It was just too tempting to come out here to all of my beautiful yarn and pick the yarn that I wanted to knit with instead of carrying around a single skein of dishcloth yarn. I did get injured at the end of November, beginning of December, and so I really couldn't crank out anything like I normally would during the holiday months. Fun fact number 2, I moved away from self-striping somewhat. Not that I love self-striping any less, However, I think that I was reevaluating what I tend to gravitate towards. What do I want to make the most? I have so much sock yarn that is self-striping. So much. I could make it so many pairs of socks. So I thought, you know what? I don't want to add to my collection too much. Obviously, if I see something I really love, I'm going to get it if I can. But I tried to focus more on thinking about what I wanted to make and buying yarn accordingly. So that leads us into fun fact number 3. I tried really hard to buy the appropriate amount of yarn for a future project. So I instituted 2 rules. One is that if I really want to knit a sweater, then I need to make sure to buy the amount of yarn for a sweater. So you can see over here, I have 4 skeins, there's probably 5 back there, of yarn. I have some skeins down here, right here as well. Anything that is in DK weight, I want to be trying to buy a sweater's quantity of to make sure that I can actually use it. Barring buying a full sweater quantity, like let's say I really like skeins of indie dyed yarn, then I instituted the 2 skein rule. The 2 skein rule is that if I really like a yarn and it's not something that is clearly a one-off or for socks, then I need to buy 2 skeins of it. 2 skeins of it, especially in a fingering weight yarn, probably yields at least 800 yards, and that is enough for a decently sized shawl. It's good for part of a sweater. You can mix and match colors still. So, and then in a DK, if I bought 2 skeins of something, again, try to see if I can mix and match it, or maybe I can hold it with mohair, or find a project that uses both mohair and a DK weight. I don't know, something. I just feel like it provides more options than buying only single skeins. However, of course, there are going to be times where you can only get a single skein, and that's okay too, but I just tried to be more mindful of my consumption. Fun fact number 4 is I did 4 test knits or test crafts during 2020. The test projects that I did were I test knit 2 sweaters, the Columberry pullover, and the backlit tee, which I will be showing on a future podcast because I finally can show it, and a cowl, the Glide cowl, which I made in very festive colors, and no photos and no videos will do it justice, but I test knit that as well. It was great. All 3 of those actually come from Stephanie Lotvin. I just really like testing for her. And of course, my 4th test craft was that test crochet scarf. As 2019 ended and 2020 started, I had almost 100 subscribers here on YouTube. I think I had maybe around 93 subscribers this time in 2020. So I had started my podcast in January of 2019. And so by the time that same time around came in 2020, I had almost 100 subscribers. And now in the beginning of 2021, I have a little over 220 subscribers. Now, I am not planning on monetizing my channel. I'm not planning on, doing my podcast as a part-time or full-time job. I do like having people watch my podcast, of course, but when I started, I really didn't mind if it was just Steve, my partner, and my family who watched my podcast. It's nice to have other people around to talk to and build community. I even got to do a giveaway this year. That was so fun. Knit Circus had donated a skein of their gradient yarn, which was amazing, and it was so fun to do a giveaway. So having a community, of course, allows for more fun things like that, but I'm not trying to blow up, my subscriber count or my follower count. I don't heavily market or anything like that. I'm just really interested in finding like-minded people to share my crafting with. That said, I am so grateful for every single one of you who come, whether this is your first time or whether you're coming back. I really appreciate your viewership and your comments. I really want you to engage with me as much as you feel comfortable, and yeah, let's keep building this channel together. For Instagram, I want to say in 2019 or so, I converted my Instagram from a personal Instagram into a personal blog Instagram. I can't remember why I did that. I think that there are some kind of feature differences, and I honestly mostly just post knitting stuff on Instagram or crafting stuff on Instagram anyway. I love following people from the crafting community. I have cultivated a really good group around me that I feel share my values and are authentic and have beautiful yarny projects. And maybe you're not posting yarny projects, but we connect in some other way, and I really appreciate everyone that I have over there on Instagram. I think I'm at almost 500 followers on Instagram, but to be honest, I don't keep track of that at all. I just like posting to my story, which is what I primarily do, or occasionally posting to my grid. I had gotten in the habit for a while of posting almost every day, and I think it was right before stories became one of the primary sort of like communication tools on Instagram. Like, it was right after stories had been added, and it was still when Snapchat was being used, so I don't know. And now I'm like super behind because I do not know how to do reels. If you know how to do reels, teach me. I don't know. I have tried and it looks simple, but it honestly seems like a lot more work than you'd think. And I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to do it. In 2020, for the first time, I did a Make 9. I picked very specific projects. I even researched the yarn that I would want to use for each project, and I was very intentional about the projects that I chose. How did I do on my Make 9 in 2020? Not good. I created 2 projects out of my Make 9 for last year. Looking back at the 9 projects that I wanted to make, I still want to make those projects. The problem is, I feel like a lot of really good items came out last year, and I wanted to make those. And not in necessarily a new shiny thing, like get on the hype train, big designer releases, big pattern, now I feel FOMO if I'm not knitting it or crocheting it. It was 100% just what were my tastes. A lot of stuff happened last year, a lot of really terrible things, and a lot of really painful things, and I really just sort of leaned into what makes me feel good. What do I want to make? And again, not that the projects that I picked were bad in any way, they just ended up not being what made me feel fulfilled, and I am okay with that. But the 2 projects that I did make was, one, a 54 cowl. I think I actually knit that first cowl on January 1st. I think that I finished it on January 1st, or like right around there. And so, I mean, it's a really quick, easy, scrappy project. But the other thing that I knit from my Make 9 was the Lunarizing sweater. So it was my top thing that I wanted to make out of my top 9. It was the number 1 item, and I'm so glad I made it. I think it's a little too big, but I know more now, and I would happily make another one. And yes, Lunarizing by Tina Say. It is so comfy, cozy, and so pretty, and I just love the style. I really think the design of the Lunarizing is clever and really pretty to look at and eye-catching. And so if I was gonna make one thing from my Make 9, I'm so glad that it was Lunarizing. Last year when I talked about my Make 9, I did put it in, I think, a regular podcast episode, and so that episode was incredibly long, and I didn't start discussing my plans for the year until halfway through. I don't want to repeat the same thing, because when I went back to that video, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so long. And I like long videos. I like when I watch podcasts and they're at least a half an hour. If they are 45 minutes, it's like perfect. But that video it just felt really long when the title of the video was 2020 Make 9 or something to that effect, and you don't get to the Make 9 until over an hour into the podcast. So I'm actually going to, right after I finish filming this, I'm going to create a separate video to talk about what are my plans for 2021. At the very least, you have made it. It is 2021 now. We are moving forward. I mean, nothing really has changed from 2020 to now. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. If you're watching this years into the future, this is what it was like in the past when we were in the middle of a pandemic. So I hope everyone is able to stay safe and healthy, and that you're taking care of yourself and being gentle with yourself during a very difficult time. Just because we have gone back to normal in a lot of ways, because we kind of have to keep society moving forward, that doesn't mean that your internal processes are accepting that the way that you want it to. Just because your brain gets tired of something, or because the government gets tired of something, doesn't mean that your body is going to just naturally accept it. So please be gentle with yourself, be gentle with others. We're all going through a very complex and difficult time. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you have any comments on my year in review, if you want to tell me about your year in review, please leave a comment. I would be happy to chat with you about it. Again, find me on Instagram, follow me, send me a message, let me know that you found me via YouTube, or if you're here because you follow my Instagram, thank you so much. I will see you again soon. Bye.